My name is Olivia, and at 40 years old, I've been married to Michael, my husband and former colleague, for a decade. Although we now work in separate branches, we once shared the same department. Michael, a man of strong responsibility and confidence, is admired by those around him. His ambition and charismatic presence often mask his vulnerabilities, and his impressive work performance has made him a prime candidate for promotion. In contrast, I'm more reserved and prefer to stay out of the spotlight. Our differing personalities were evident from the start, and I was surprised by his ardent pursuit of me. After 2 years of dating, he proposed with a grand bouquet of roses, and the intensity of his affection was unlike anything I'd experienced before. Overwhelmed with excitement about our future together, I said yes. However, I was unprepared for the reality that awaited me, living with my in-laws. Despite my initial hesitation and the lack of prior discussion, Michael was adamant about us living together. He assured me that my in-laws were eager to welcome me and that it would be a positive experience. Given my parents' decency and his heartfelt persuasion, I relented. For the past 10 years, I have lived with Michael's family, and the experience has been far from what I envisioned when I first said I do. Olivia, you missed cleaning the front door again, didn't you? My mother-in-law's daily criticism began as soon as I finished preparing breakfast. It's become a morning ritual. I'm sorry. Apologies aren't enough. If you understand, get it done right now. Despite needing to head to work, I'm treated like a servant from the moment I wake up. Since moving in with my in-laws, I've had to rise at 5 a.m. each day to cook breakfast and tidy up. It would be nice if she, a housewife with plenty of time, would take on some of the chores. Yet she avoids housework entirely. I rush through my morning tasks, go to work, and when I return home, I start dinner right away. By the time I collapse into bed, exhaustion overwhelms me, and I fall asleep immediately. This relentless routine has persisted for years, leaving me feeling unwell and drained. I'm sure stress is the cause. I don't want the neighbors thinking I'm neglecting my duties, so I make sure to clean thoroughly. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law lounges in the living room, enjoying the breakfast I prepared. You'll be late for work if you don't hurry, she warns. Despite the situation, my husband has never defended me, and my father-in-law pretends not to notice, hiding behind his newspaper. Ever since moving in with Michael's family, I've endured relentless mistreatment. The stress has caused me to lose significant weight and look unhealthy. You're too skinny and unattractive. That's why you can't have a child. I lost a significant amount of weight suddenly, and my periods stopped, making it impossible for me to conceive. Despite my mother-in-law being the root of my stress and health issues, I found myself blamed for it. Before marrying, I was diligent about my health and appearance, but now, those aspects have nearly vanished. The continuous harassment from my mother-in-law and the distress of seeing my changed reflection have left me deeply depressed. I've become entirely subservient to her, so much so that I no longer have the energy or desire to leave the house. Then came the devastating news. My father had died suddenly in an accident. I hadn't visited my family home in ages because my husband and mother-in-law would berate me whenever I mentioned wanting to go. The news of my father's death hit me hard, and I deeply regretted not spending more time with him. Although my family home is just an hour away from my in-laws, when I asked my husband and mother-in-law to attend my father's funeral, the response was chilling. There's going to be a funeral for my father. Oh, we're not going, just let your family handle it. They cut me off abruptly, their words a harsh blow. Overwhelmed with anger and grief, I could only manage a shaken reply. At the funeral, the outpouring of grief from those who had gathered was a testament to how much my father was loved. He had been self-employed and well-connected, and the tears shed by the attendees underscored his impact on those around him. Olivia, it's been a while, but what happened to you? You've lost so much weight. My mother, who hadn't seen me in some time, was shocked by my gaunt appearance. Just a bit. I'm not sick, if that's what you're worried about. Her eyes filled with tears, and she began to cry, clearly distressed. Given her fragile emotional state after my father's death, it wasn't surprising. I'm not sick, Mom. Please don't worry. I tried to reassure her over the phone and took a moment to compose myself in the waiting room. If you're not sick, then what's wrong? She asked, her voice trembling with concern. I reflected on how my husband and mother-in-law had reacted, or rather failed to react, to the news of my father's death. Their indifference fueled my frustration, and I decided to confide in my mother about my life at my in-laws. Actually, I've been dealing with what feels like bullying from my mother-in-law. It's been really wearing me down. As I spoke, my gaze dropped to the floor, unable to meet her worried eyes. My mother's face was etched with concern as she listened to my troubles. I'm relieved you're not sick, but this news doesn't make me feel any better. Is this why you haven't been coming to see me? Yes, I nodded in response. My mother handed me a piece of paper. Take a look at this and then think about what you want to do next. I unfolded the paper and discovered it was my father's will. He had been meticulous and had prepared for contingencies. The will detailed an inheritance of $2 million. That's what it says. It's up to you how you want to use it. I was taken aback by the substantial amount. The thought of using this inheritance to escape my current living situation began to take shape. I envisioned building my own house and finally leaving my in-laws' home behind. With this newfound financial support, my future seemed to be taking a brighter turn. Returning to my in-laws' home, I resumed my usual household chores. The house often looked more disheveled on days when I had plans, likely because there was no one else to help with the cleaning. As I worked, I couldn't stop thinking about the $2 million. Despite my grievances with my mother-in-law, I still wanted to remain with my husband Michael. I decided to have an honest conversation with him about the inheritance and proposed the idea of moving out of my in-laws' home. There's something I need to discuss, I said, waiting for Michael's parents to retire for the night before starting the conversation. Discuss. Michael looked curious. Yes, it's about my father. I've recently come into an inheritance. Oh, how much? Michael asked, intrigued. It's $2 million. The amount seemed to catch Michael off guard, his eyes widening in surprise. Wait, what? Yes, $2 million. His initial shock quickly turned into excitement. He left you that much? That's incredibly generous. I was about to outline how I planned to use the money, but before I could get to the main point, Michael interrupted with a startling suggestion. We need to transfer that money to my mom's bank account right away. I was taken aback by his proposal, finding it so unexpected and absurd that I initially thought he was joking. No, why? I'm the one who inherited it, so it's not right to just give it away, I replied, trying to keep my tone light despite my confusion. Michael's reaction was intense. He slammed the table with frustration. What are you talking about? A wife's money belongs to her mother-in-law. His words struck me as absurd, and it was clear he didn't see how unreasonable he was being. His serious demeanor only heightened my fear. I'm sorry, but I don't understand your reasoning. I was only planning to suggest using the money to build a house for us to live in together, but before I could even make my proposal, you tried to claim the inheritance for your mother. That night, I couldn't sleep well due to the shock of the confrontation. The next day, while preparing breakfast, Michael and my mother-in-law approached with furious expressions. Olivia, I heard about your inheritance, $2 million, and you're saying you won't give it to us? Who do you think you are? As a daughter-in-law, it's expected that you share your money with us, my mother-in-law snapped. Michael had already informed her about the inheritance. You need to stop resisting and transfer the money to my parents' account immediately. A daughter-in-law's money belongs to the family. They seemed determined to get the inheritance by any means. Despite my refusals, their accusations continued. Realizing that further resistance was futile, I fell silent. Michael then handed me a piece of paper. You're getting a bit too confident because of this money. Remember, I've been supporting you. If you don't change your attitude, it's divorce? The paper he showed me was a divorce form, already signed by him. Here's the form. Take it and go back to your parents' house. If you apologize sincerely, I might reconsider the divorce. Holding the completed divorce papers, I was flooded with memories. I had never been financially supported in this house. I had always contributed equally to living expenses and managed all household chores on my own. Despite my efforts, I had been consistently undervalued, and now they were even trying to claim my father's money. If I stayed, I might have felt pressure to give up the inheritance. However, this money was left to me by my father. Being told to leave actually felt like an opportunity. With the divorce papers in hand, I realized the decision about my future was mine to make. I resolved not to give away my father's inheritance and decided to go back home after finishing work that day. I'm home. Welcome back. I had a feeling you'd be returning soon. My mother greeted me with a warm smile. Despite my exhaustion, the table was set with her comforting home-cooked meals. I couldn't recall the last time I had enjoyed a meal prepared by someone else. As I took a bite, the deliciousness of the food brought tears to my eyes. Did you talk to your husband about the inheritance? Yes, and it caused quite a stir. I recounted the heated exchange with my husband and mother-in-law. My mother listened in stunned silence. The inheritance is yours and it's up to you how you use it. She offered gentle comfort as I cried, and after a week of being cared for at my parents' home, I decided it was time to return to my in-laws. Well, I'm heading back. Take care. I felt a newfound strength and was no longer afraid of returning to that house. With a sense of resolve, I made my way back to my in-laws' home. Back at last. Have you thought about your behavior? As soon as I arrived, my husband and mother-in-law were waiting for me, arms crossed and expressions stern. Yes, I apologize. Please let me stay in the house again. I offered a perfunctory apology. My mother-in-law's grin widened upon hearing this. Then you should hand over the inheritance quickly. Actually, the inheritance process is quite slow. I haven't received it yet. It's a complicated procedure, and it might take another 6 months or so. 6 months? Is it really that long? Yes, unfortunately. Fine then. Both my mother-in-law and husband seemed satisfied, believing that I would eventually surrender the inheritance as expected. They continued to complain about my week-long absence at my parents' house. Because you weren't here doing your duties as a wife, the house is a mess. Get it cleaned up right away. The state of the house was appalling after just a week. It was almost remarkable how quickly it had become so disorganized and unhygienic. While the old me would have been deeply distressed by such a mess, I was now indifferent. No matter how much my mother-in-law berated me or how challenging the chores were, it didn't bother me in the least. I set about cleaning the house as instructed. It was my mother-in-law's birthday. I'm heading out now. Make sure you keep the house clean. As usual, my mother-in-law left for a birthday trip, and naturally, I wasn't invited. By the way, have you received the inheritance yet? It's supposed to come in today. How convenient. That $2 million is a gift for Mom. Make sure to transfer it to her account before we return. It's quite a coincidence that the inheritance and my mother-in-law's birthday are on the same day, I replied with a hint of sarcasm. My husband, oblivious to the subtext, didn't catch on. Without addressing his comment, I smiled and said, "Take care." Once they were out of sight, I sprang into action. I had been eagerly anticipating this moment. They would be in for a surprise when they returned, but that was no longer my concern. I quickly packed my belongings and left my husband's family home for good. Wow, this is incredible. I marveled as I moved my things into my new house, built with my father's inheritance. I'm so thrilled to live in such a beautiful home, I said to my mother, who had come to stay with me. It was a relief to be free from the burdens of my former life. I settled into the plush sofa, feeling a deep sense of contentment. That day was a celebration of our new beginning, complete with a luxurious meal prepared by a chef we had hired. The following evening, my phone rang. It was a call from my husband. What the hell is going on? My husband's confusion was evident as he discovered that all my belongings had vanished upon his return. I won't be coming back, goodbye. I tried to end the call quickly, not wanting to engage further, but my mother-in-law's voice erupted on the other end. What are you doing? Where are you? I can't disclose that information. You were supposed to clean the house. I see you've taken everything. That's not a joke. Besides, you didn't get the inheritance. How many times do I need to say it? A daughter-in-law's money is ours. Huh? I'm single now. The line fell silent after my mother-in-law heard that. Her disbelief was palpable. Single? Well, I'm officially divorced. I signed the papers you gave me, so I'm no longer connected to you. Goodbye. I ended the call, unable to stop laughing at the thought of my mother-in-law's stunned reaction. I felt an immense sense of relief knowing I was finally free from that family. After that, I was bombarded with calls from my ex-husband. When I had a moment to myself, I deliberately answered the phone, enduring the abuse from both him and my ex-mother-in-law. I meticulously recorded every call, planning to report their harassment to the police. Harassment from an ex-spouse is unfortunately common, and the police typically issue a warning before things escalate. Thankfully, the police acted swiftly and visited my ex-husband's family to issue a warning. Given their concern for their public image, even the mere presence of the police was damaging enough. Additionally, one of my ex-husband's subordinates, who lived in the neighborhood, witnessed the police visit. As my ex-husband was a notable figure in his company, news of the police involvement spread rapidly, Colleagues and subordinates who were dissatisfied with him began circulating negative rumors. Eventually, these rumors reached my former department. Did you hear the police were involved? I'm divorced now, so I don't really follow that anymore. Divorced? I got tired of the abuse from my mother-in-law and my ex. I spoke loudly enough for others to hear, feeling the rumor mill. The gossip quickly spread, and it wasn't long before it reached my ex-husband's boss. You've been the subject of some unfavorable rumors. What do you mean? I don't tolerate men who don't value and respect their wives. With these damaging rumors circulating, it's harming our reputation. Therefore, I've decided to transfer you. The transfer order handed to my ex-husband was particularly harsh. Wait, this place, it was a branch office in the worst performing region. There's absolutely nothing around. It's practically a landlocked island. Do you understand what this means? With this transfer, everything my ex-husband had worked for was unraveling, and his prospects for promotion were dashed. Unable to refuse the transfer, he had no choice but to move to this remote area. Meanwhile, my ex-mother-in-law was likely reeling from the blow to her son's reputation and the loss of living with him. She withdrew from society and developed depression, with possible signs of dementia causing frequent disturbances at home. My ex-father-in-law was left struggling to care for her, dealing with the dramatic change in their lives. Despite the lack of blood relation, a daughter-in-law is still considered a significant family member, and the misfortune that befell my former in-laws felt like a form of karma for their relentless harassment. Now, I'm living happily with my mother. We've even taken up gardening in our spacious yard. If I had still been in that house, I would have never discovered this fulfilling hobby. Finding this new passion has reinvigorated me, and my body, once worn out by stress, has regained its health. I'm thrilled to have severed ties with my former in-laws and to be enjoying this new chapter in my life.